First, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to sit down with me. When my brother sent you, or when my brother sent me the article, my brother David, who knows you from school, I knew that I had to talk to you because I thought that whole Medium article that you wrote on the automation and podcast Instagram, which we'll get into, was insane. So first, thanks for taking the time to sit down.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. Glad you liked it.
So before we get into that, I thought a good place to start would be one of your favorite Instagram accounts, House of Highlights. That when I was doing some research on some of the podcasts you sent me, I heard that House of Highlights was one of your favorite accounts on Instagram.
Yep.
And obviously, with the shutdown, with the absence of sports, there's not a lot of sports going on. So I wanted to know for you, what sort of clips or games or sports content have you found yourself revisiting in the absence of everything kind of going away?
Yeah, that it's been tough for sure. I thought it was really smart. I don't know if this just was completely by coincidence or it was somehow masterminded, but the Jordan documentary that came out a month or two ago, that was really what I relied on. I watched that three or four times, but it's been tough, and now that it's back. It's been much better. But yeah, I haven't been frequenting House of Highlights that much in the last couple months.
Yeah. I I actually just finished the last episode of the Jordan documentary last night.
Oh, really?
First time through. I'm definitely gonna go check it out again, but
Right.
I
Yeah, it's
thought
good.
I thought it was crazy how much of a killer instinct Jordan has, and I didn't realize it growing up because
Right.
when he was in his prime, I was 3 or 4, if
Yeah.
that. And I know you're a little younger than me. You're 25, right?
Yeah.
So the only times we remember him was on the Wizards, basically, when he
Right.
came back, like where I actually visually remember seeing clips of Jordan play. And I always heard about Jordan. I never really went down the YouTube rabbit hole of watching his old clips. And then when I was watching this
Right.
documentary, just all the locker room talk and the back and forth banter and gambling and competition when he's not even on the court just put no doubt in my mind that he has to be number one. Like I don't know that much about
Yeah.
basketball, but just after watching that documentary, and I'm definitely susceptible to the recency bias because I just literally finished it.
Yeah.
But it's like how else could anyone ever play like that? He was such a
Yeah.
force, and he didn't give a fuck. He was just like, I'm here to win. I don't care about what I haven't done yet. I'm just gonna
Yeah.
destroy you.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's I'm a little bit of the opposite of you. I'm a huge basketball fan. I worked at the NBA, and
Hmm.
um, you know I kind of get frustrated because I don't know if people my age really understood that, because I do go through the YouTube rabbit holes and the archives and stuff like that. And now it kind of I had a lot of people text me and say, you know what, you were right. So I really like that part of it.
You were right when. Do you think Jordan's the goat too? Is that what they were saying?
Easily, easily. And a lot of people that thought otherwise or maybe disagreed with me came back and said, you might have been right there. So I did appreciate that part of it.
What do people in the NBA community think about the Jordan documentary as a whole? Because I know you used to work in the NBA. Are you still in touch with those guys about what they thought about it and kind of their view on how everything went down?
Gotcha. I actually never talked to them about it. That's a good point. That's a good question. Probably something I'm going to do right after this. I'm curious to get those takes, because a lot of those debates or conversations I had was actually when I worked there. So, um, you know, I wouldn't mind nudging them and say, hey, still think that or think the same. That's a good point. I actually haven't checked in on that.
Yeah. No, that debate could go on for a long time, but I imagine watching the documentary makes it more obvious that Jordan is the number one, if you believe that. But it's hard to imagine a documentary about LeBron James convincing me that he was over Jordan just based on what I've seen, but who knows?
Yeah,
Anything's
I
possible.
feel that. Yep, I completely agree. We're on
So
the same page here.
yeah. Well, let's see if we can find something we could disagree on within the next 90 minutes or so. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
so to go back to the Medium article that you wrote
Yep.
on creating an Instagram account called Beautiful NYC, and you were able to automate it using your experience as a data coder. Could you give people a brief overview that may have not read that article? And I'm going to link the article for everyone listening to this in the podcast description. But for people who haven't seen it yet, and it went viral on Medium, could you describe briefly what you did and why you did it with that Instagram account?
Yeah, sure. So essentially, what I did is I made an Instagram account that was completely sustaining. And what I mean by that is on its own, using some programs I wrote, um, did the posting, did the actual finding of the pictures, captioning it, coming up with strategic hashtags, following people, unfollowing people. And it's on its own. It was to the point where I didn't even need to even log into it anymore for it to operate in a very strategic manner. But the end goal of it, which was also automatic, was for it to kind of become its own little influencer, if you will. And by that, I mean it reached out to restaurants in New York City and said, hey, I got this really big, popular Instagram account. It's all post pictures in New York City. Everyone's, looking for things to do in New York City. They come to my account, come let me, eat for free at your restaurant, and I'll post about your restaurant, on the Instagram account. And I got a lot of positive responses from restaurants, and I was actually able to go and enjoy the benefits of that a couple times.
Yeah, that's awesome, and I that's someone's dream. That is people's dream to be able to use social media to get what they want. I think about that like fashion
Exactly.
with fashion all the time. I know
Yeah.
I messaged you a little bit over email about would this be possible on TikTok, because for whatever reason I've had some more success on TikTok than Instagram, and so immediately when I saw
Yeah.
that I thought, okay, how can I automate this for fashion, or how can I create this page where people will just send me free shoes or free clothes and stuff. So
Yeah.
when I read about what you were doing, I had heard about bots, and I've experimented with bots myself on Instagram. Got
Hmm.
flagged for having too many likes or unlikes, which you talked
Right.
about in the article, and so I ended up just getting rid of that account completely. But could you describe to people what you did, how it's different from the traditional bot? Because it sounds like you had an artificial intelligence twist on it, where it was actually learning
Hmm.
as it was going.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I guess there are definitely a lot of softwares out there, and I don't know if you care to share which ones you tried, or do you remember?
If you could you say a couple that are big? Maybe it was one of those.
Uh,
It was about 2 years
Follow
ago.
Liker,
Follow
Jarvie.
follow like your sounds really familiar.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
So, my introduction into actual programming, not even botting and social media, like actual programming, was because I was using Follow Liker,
Mm-hmm.
and I hated it. I didn't know how to really write any code when I graduated college. I was using Follow Liker. It was driving me nuts, and I said, "There's no way such a popular software can't be written better." And I
Mm-hmm.
set out to learn how to program to write a better software. That's actually how I got into all of this in the get go. And I think that those softwares, whether that's Follow Like or Jarvie, they just kind of execute on the tasks that you tell it um, to do. However, you as a person don't really know what to do. You just think you do.
Mm-hmm.
So what I mean by that is, you load pre customized settings into these softwares that say, follow 300 people a day, unfollow these people, do this, that. But who's to say you actually know what you're doing? You're just kind of using your intuition.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, again, I did that at first, and I was like, I don't know that I'm doing this the right way, or I don't know that I'm going to get in trouble by doing it the way I think it should be done. So um, what I did is I said, okay, I'm going to let the program tell me. Um, and I basically created an army of Instagram accounts where I randomized the functionality. Follow this amount of people, unfollow this, like this, do this, and record when I was getting, shut off or rate limited or whatever,
Hmm.
and basically have it teach itself what is the maximum amount it could get away with before you're going to get, in trouble. And I think Instagram updated that a lot on their end, which in turn caused people who were using these softwares to, not be able to figure that out, that it changed, and
Hmm.
not update it and then get themselves in trouble. Whereas my thing, on the accounts, as soon as it hit that, it went back into its settings and said, we need to change something. And it did that automatically, which allowed me to, to go about the automation in a smarter way than just loading something into a software and hoping um, what you can get away with.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of that thing that a lot of influencers do in the Instagram community, but no one ever talks about really using
Yeah.
bots. I've heard some podcasts that talk about it in depth, but I was one of those guys who jumped into it with zero experience in bots, and I didn't do much research on what the limits were for Instagram. I kind of watched
Right.
a couple YouTube videos, was like, oh, that's perfect. While I'm at work, I'll have my Instagram following just like keep going up and up and up. And
Right.
it did for a while, but the engagement was getting lower and lower, which didn't make sense to
Hmm.
me. And
Yeah.
so when I was getting more followers, I was thinking this is great. I'm just gonna up the limit. So I was probably following maybe between 600 and 800 people a day, like follow, unfollow,
Yeah. Right.
and then the engagement started going way down, and it was to the point where the account that I first created for the podcast had 10,000 followers, but I was getting like 50 likes on a photo, where
Hmm.
before I had maybe a couple thousand, but I was getting like 300 likes. So I was like, what the fuck is going on? So I finally looked into it, and Instagram, there's all this stuff with shadow banning, or it'll kind of like
Yeah.
demote your account and stuff like that. And I know it sounds salty to say that you got shadow banned because maybe my content just sucked. That's also a possibility too. Like it
Yeah.
was just fucking terrible, and that's why no one was like it. But there was like a
Right.
definite drop from when I looked back
Yeah.
to the analytics of when I raised the follow unfollow
Hmm.
count to when everything started going off the cliffs. So I just
Right.
kind of trashed that account, assumed
Hmm.
it was just done, and then basically started over. So I, I I think it's an important thing to talk about because people want to become Instagram influencers and they want to use bots, but it's like one of those things. If everyone does it but no one talks about it, then no one learns about it because
Right.
there's not a lot of resource on how to use a bot properly on social media
Hmm.
because people don't want to come out and admit like this is what I've learned from using a bot because then that means you've
Right.
used a bot.
Exactly. Yeah. And like I'm not as much into the botting game as I used to be, especially when I wrote that article.
Hmm.
But there are a lot of different theories about why that happened, and like you said, not only does someone not divulge their secrets when it comes to botting, right? You can't just go knock on Instagram's door either and say, "What's going on
Yeah, like
here?"
how do I use a bot? Instagram, how do I cheat your
Yeah,
system?
exactly. Like exactly. Or you can't even say like, "Hey, what's going on with my engagement rate?"
Hmm.
One theory that I tend to believe, again, and this is anecdotal, is that about 6 to 10 months ago, somewhere in that range, I just across the Instagram spectrum, engagement dropped. Like, I mean, I'm talking like everyone was complaining. It was like kind of sudden, and someone said, "Yeah, they actually did this on Facebook too. They got people hooked, dropped engagement. People want to keep their engagement up, and they go buy ads through actual Instagram to get it back up."
Hmm.
Because that's kind of where they based everything at this point. They can't afford for it to go down. And um, I tested that theory on one account I had. I went and just bit the bullet and bought like a heavy ad spend. And after that, my engagement on my post went back to normal
Hmm.
or much higher than it used to be. So, and then after a while,
Was
although the
was it
posting remained
after
consistent.
Was it after just one ad spend, or were you continually buying ads?
Well, the way I did is I bought one, and then for the next like 4 or 5 posts, my engagement was up, and then it like dropped again, and like there was
Yeah.
nothing different in the posts. You know, it was, it was actually on a fashion related account, that I had, and the posts don't change; they're the same
Hmm.
type of thing, um, and then they drop down again, and then I did it one more time, and it went back up, and I was like, all right, this kind of, at least for me, proved the theory. So that's kind of what I walked away from. And look, my bots still run and they're still effective for me. But I used to do this for clients. I don't anymore. But that's kind of what I
Hmm.
walked away telling myself, at least, like, all right, that's what happened. Good to know. And that's kind of how I capped it off. So I
Yeah.
do believe there is some truth to that.
Yeah, no, I mean it makes sense if your business model is to push people towards ads.
Right.
If you lower the ceiling across the board of what everyone on Instagram is able to cross through, then you're going to incentivize people to buy more ads. And
Right.
especially if a bunch of people are talking on Instagram and they say, "Oh, I bought an ad, my shit went back up," or then other
Yeah.
people are going to be like, "Oh, that's what I have to do too."
Right.
Have you looked into
Exactly.
doing what you're doing on Instagram with the kind of hybrid learning bot system on the video platforms like TikTok? Because TikTok's algorithm is interesting, and I don't have much data or coding experience at all. I just have somewhat of a basic understanding, but it seems like you can go much more viral on TikTok to the point where your following almost doesn't even matter. Like it seems like people are having these videos go to 300K views or a million views, and I'll go to some of these accounts and they have 500, 1,500 followers. And
Hmm.
I've had videos where I'll post it and then 2 weeks later I'll just get a shit ton of notifications and it's like this
Right.
video is blowing up. Have you looked into doing what you're doing on the video style accounts like TikTok?
So I don't have much experience in TikTok. Mostly because I think I'm still a little unconvinced of its longevity. Not even just because of what's going on in the news with the data or anything.
Mhm.
To me, it seems a little faddish,
Mhm.
and it takes a lot of bandwidth to invest in something that you're not, programmatically speaking, that you're not completely sold on. That again, I don't have. That's just my inkling. Um, that being said, the word on the street is that you know it's much tougher to automate TikTok,
Mhm.
mostly because it doesn't have a web component to it, or as much, at least to the extent that Instagram has.
Mhm.
And furthermore, is that when I did look into TikTok, the brief time I did, checking it out and seeing if it was automatable, is that, and again, I don't use TikTok. Maybe you could tell me I'm wrong here. Is that when I was going through the explore page or its main feed, whatever it's called,
For you
I didn't,
page.
or yeah, for you
Yeah.
page, I didn't see, there weren't as many like House of Highlight type pages.
Mhm.
It was like the actual individual creator got the spotlight. I
Yeah.
wasn't seeing many like beautiful New York City. Check out these video travel videos. That it all seemed to actually be pretty specific to the actual content creator. And I don't consider myself an interesting person, so I don't think anyone's going to want to watch me on TikTok. And my
Mhm.
value is that I can put other pictures or other videos on there, but it didn't seem
Yeah.
that's what was being highlighted. So that's kind of why I didn't delve into it as much.
Yeah. So I did my own little experiment with the kind of fashion highlights on TikTok after we spoke. So I followed a bunch of fashion influencers that I like, and
Hmm.
I would screen grab their videos and download them to my phone, and I created an account where I could just curate fashion videos and credit the person in the video and
Yep.
repost their video, kind of like what you were doing with the
Hmm.
beautiful NYC account. And they all got 0 views or maybe like 2 or 3. And I looked into it a little bit, and it seems like TikTok has something that prevents people from reposting
Mhm.
content that's already exists on the account,
Yeah.
unlike Instagram. So it kind of like somehow traces everything, and then if it's already on TikTok, it won't push it out to
Right.
people. It'll just like cut it off completely. And that would I would
Yeah.
do some videos that were mine and some that were from influencers already on TikTok, and every single time it would just kind of get like cut off. It wouldn't get pushed out to
Right.
people. So I think that kind of
Yeah,
prevents
makes
a
sense.
House of Highlights account, like something like that.
Yeah, that makes complete sense to me. And, unlike Instagram, I think they can't do that because I would say more times than not that people enjoy the fact that their content is being reposted on one of these bigger pages on
Hmm.
Instagram, at least. I get comment if you go to the Instagram I use, the New York City one. Every other picture, the person's like, "Thank you so much for sharing my picture. Like, thanks for the feature." If you go to the DMs on it, there's about 1 million people submitting pictures to be reposted. I,
Hmm.
you know, I don't, I can't see that being as big of a desire on a platform like TikTok.
Yeah.
So that I could see that. I see what you're saying.
Have you gotten any messages from creators that are against what you're doing, or people that reached out that are against what you're doing? Because my I had a split feeling when I first read the Medium article,
Hmm.
where I thought, okay, if I'm putting myself in the position of someone, say someone's going around taking pictures of beautiful buildings in New York City, and they're actually the
Hmm.
ones taking the photos, and they're
Hmm.
spending 10 to 20 hours a week creating an account, and then another account comes along that is doing something very similar. They're not actually taking the photos and they're crediting people, but they're giving people the same effect, where if they look at a picture, they're going to be like, wow, that's beautiful, and
Hmm.
it's an automated thing. And so I'm split, where it's like that sucks for the creator that
Hmm.
someone in that field would put in that much effort, and then an automated system would come along and give people the same feeling. But at the same time, any creator knows that the amount of work you put into something doesn't justify it getting views or people liking it. Like, you're just because you work on something for 20 hours doesn't mean that you deserve 10 million likes or 10,000 likes or something like that. Like, it's just, is the content good? Is it what people want? Have you had
Yeah.
creators reaching out to you that are more on the negative side, like you're taking away from what we do or stuff like that?
I have. I would say it's a little. It's is rare. But half the idea was born out of the fact like I did this all manually before I automated it. Um, and I got to the point at first, when I had a small account, I was reaching out to people saying, "Can I repost your picture?" And I never received anything close to a no. I think they view it as more of like if you're putting it just to give a different perspective. I think they view it way more of like a retweet,
Mm-hmm.
like a thank you because I always say where the picture came from, um, and it's exposure. To them, it's like not only is it like kind of a plug back to their photography, it is also like wow, this account that over 60,000 people chose to follow as a prime source of beautiful pictures of New York City uh, chose mine to be on it. They must have thought mine was worthy of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's way more of the reaction I get. Now, on the flip side, I um, have two, I call them listeners. I don't know if there's a technical term for it. Thing that check my inbox and the comments of the pictures every day. And if I find anything related to like I didn't give you permission for this or take this down, whatever, it just does it. It does like it's
Yeah.
not even worth chancing, right? Like even if it's wrong, even if it's false positive, um, even if someone was like, you know, oh, I didn't give you permission to this, but I'm glad you took it, and
Mm-hmm.
my thing identified that as like a negative thing and deleted it, that's that's a risk I'm willing to take. There's no downside to that as much. So that's happened one time, in the history of me doing this across all the automated accounts I've had. One time did someone say, you know, you didn't
Yeah.
ask me to post this, and it took it down within 7 minutes, I think, or something like that.
Yeah, I think I think a lot of creators have a primal reaction when they see automation. I think not necessarily because of what you're doing,
Hmm.
but more of a fear of th- their content being automated away by something, like the threat of
Yeah.
automation. Because I thought about it, and the equivalent to what you're doing with a podcast would be like if Joe Rogan decided to put one of my podcasts in his feed and credited
Hmm.
me, and if he got followers from that, like I don't give a shit because I'm happy he reposted my thing, and he should get more followers if he thinks my content is good and he reposts it. And then I'm also getting a million eyes on my podcast and people going back to my account. So I don't think there's really any negative from what's going on with the automation. I think the threat of automation is scary, where if someone could actually automate my podcast away and I heard a podcast and I was like, oh my God, that's me. It sounds exactly like what I'm doing. Then I would be a little bit more scared, but
Right.
that's not coming anytime soon, hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I would, kind of make an analogy to pretend my account or one of my accounts wasn't Beautiful New York City. It was best podcast segments,
Yeah.
and it put yours on there. Would you be upset?
No, not at all.
I exactly. My assumption would be like, oh, a huge account about good podcasts decided to put me. I must be a worthy podcast. That's kind of how I view it. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's kind of my thought process was going into it. I didn't. I swear it wasn't nefarious, at least in my mind.
No, yeah, no, I think it's a really good idea, and other
Yeah.
people are getting benefit out of it. You're getting a benefit out of it. No one's getting
Yep.
hurt. So it's a
Yeah.
win-win situation.
Right. Yep.
Could you describe for people what it is that you do with digital presence? Because I want people to have a
Sure.
idea of what you do with your company before I ask you some questions about it.
Yeah. Absolutely. So to take a step back, I was working. First job out of college was like a quote unquote data analyst. It wasn't anything that was programming because I didn't know how to code. I actually, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, I learned how to code because I hated follow liker so much. Like literally, that was like, oh my god, I wish there was a way to automate this. Wish there was a way to
Did
automate
you learn
that.
how
And
to
like,
code senior year in college? Sorry to cut you off. Um,
so I, it depends on who you ask that question to. I knew R, which is a statistical software.
mm-hmm.
Um, if I told a programmer or a computer science guy that I knew how to code because I knew how to R, yeah, I knew how to write R, they would be upset with me. So like there was like high level concepts.
Mm-hmm.
Um, no way would have I passed like a job interview that it required any coding of any sort. Um, so
Is it uncommon for someone to have learned that late in the game and have gotten the job you were able to get out of college in the NBA?
um, I if Dish Network, where my first job was, gave me an R programming test, I would have failed it. Um, I I think they would have been looking for someone who had been doing it for like years and
Mm-hmm.
years.
Gotcha.
That's not to say someone can pick it up quicker. But my, so I knew statistical programming. I don't think that falls under the loop of a programmer by any means.
Mm-hmm.
Up for debate, fair. But at least Python, which is a real scripting language, I had never even looked at a line of it before I started my first job at Dish Network. And it's funny, one of my co-founders of my company dug up a post I put on Stack Overflow, which is like, for those who don't know, it's a kind of like a form for programming questions. And someone's like, hey, I'm trying to do something that does this, and this is my code, it's not working. And someone comments and like fix their code. I wrote a question on Stack Overflow like 3 years ago that said, I'm trying to scrape the number of followers someone has on Instagram, and I can't do it. Can someone help me? Um, and he took a picture of that and put it in our Slack channel. He was like, you went from asking how to do the simplest task to building a robot that got itself on NPR. And I was like, yeah, So it was actually, the fact that I learned that I had a real need for it, that I said, I want to know how to record the number of followers I have every day to make sure I'm doing this effective. I want to do this. I want to scrape pictures automatically. That actually taught me how to program. Um, Got to the point where I considered myself very proficient in Python programming, and got myself a job at NBC as a software engineer. And I hated it. Like, I almost can't watch NBC because I hated the job so much. Not because of anything NBC did, just because, sitting behind a computer and writing ones and zeros all day is actually not something I really considered myself to love doing. What I did like was with the math and the statistics, the data science and the machine learning type stuff. And I was applying to all these jobs to be like a machine learning engineer to do statistical modeling, and I was getting shut out left and right. And the reason being was because a real data scientist, a real machine learning engineer, needed like a master's or a PhD. And I said, hey, I really know how to code. I really know data science. I know machine learning. I know statistics. Like, I'm gonna need to do something to prove it. And that's actually where that article was born. It was actually like an addendum to my resume. Um, and so I did that, got myself a job at the NBA, which I consider my dream job. But at the same time, that blog post went viral, and people were reaching out to me left and right saying, can you do this for me? Can you automate my Instagram? Can you grow my followers and all that stuff? And I was like, oh, okay, I'll charge you $30, $50. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I got to the point where I had so many people reaching out to me that I called up a buddy from school and I said, I think we got something here. You want to, quit our 9 to 5s and start a job, start a company. And we did that. And we operated on just growing people's Instagram accounts. That was simply our business business model. We charged people like $50 a month, deployed this code that I wrote about on their account. And that was all great. But I didn't find it to be super long term or super profitable because Instagram's always changing. I'm doing something that is technically a gray area, and I really saw influencer marketing to be more of a lucrative area.
Mm-hmm.
I saw a lot of money going through influencers to brands and stuff like that, and I said, hey, that's where I need to be. So at first I tried to actually do the marketing myself, but I realized there are a lot of inefficiencies in doing that marketing. So I took a step back and I set out to create technology that can aid in influencer marketing, and landed on now developing a software that we call Bella. It's actually named after my dog.
Yeah, I saw on the website. I like the human aspect of it.
Gotcha. Yeah. So Bella is, I like to compare it to, I don't know if you've used the Robinhood stock trading app.
I'm familiar
Um,
with it, but I haven't used it.
Gotcha. So like Robinhood, you can go in, you could track stocks, you can do technical analysis, you can buy stocks, you could sell stocks, you could keep up on the news. Bella is the same thing, but for influencer marketing. You can log in, you could find influencers, you could track them, you could pay them, you could see your metrics, you should see what it's doing for your brand, etc. So less about actually doing the marketing and more about being a software arm for marketers to run influencer marketing campaigns. So that's where we've geared our attention. We got ourselves into a startup accelerator called New Chip, where they're really aiding us through that. And they also helped us do our first fundraising round. And we recently, just as as late as last week, closed a $500,000 raise in which we
Wow.
are now really expanding.
Congratulations. That's
Yeah,
fucking
thank you.
huge.
Um, and I have a couple full-time engineers on board, and like that's what we're really aiming to launch in the next month.
So, to take a step back, I noticed you said you you pretty much had proof of concept before you quit your job, where people were reaching out to you.
Right.
It wasn't just an idea. It was you had published this article, and then because of the skills that you had, people were reaching out to you and said, I
Hmm.
need you to do what you do for yourself for
Yep.
me.
Right.
What is your best advice for someone who's thinking about maybe leaving their 9 to 5 in a similar situation? Do you advise waiting for proof of concept, or if someone has a really good idea, whether like this is going to work no matter what? What are your thoughts on leaving your 9 to 5?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say 95% of the cases, I would say, okay, prove the concept before you'd make a major decision like that. The only opposition or rebuttal I could understand is if it was like really time sensitive, or you thought if you didn't act on it right away you weren't going to be able to, maybe because of competition or something like that. But yeah, and I have these kind of headbutts with my co-founders all the time. They say, hey, we should do this, you know you should build it, as one of the programmers, and I say, go sell it. I'll do it manually for the first time, and then if you can sell it, then I'll build it for you. For example, we should sell a data set that has this information. Say, okay, go sell it to someone first. If you can make the sale, we'll do it manual the first time. It's going to be a pain in the butt, but then we'll automate it. So I even did that when I made the pivot to influencer marketing. I reached out to a YouTuber. Um, his name is John Barr. His channel is Here Be Bar, and he's a New York City based YouTuber. Spots you need to visit in Brooklyn type thing. And I got in contact with him and I said, hey, what's the next video you're going to make? And he said, I'm actually making a rooftop bar guide. And I said, okay, how much would you charge me to inject a bar into that video? And he was like, I don't know, a couple $100. And I wrote a program that went out to all these rooftop bars and basically solicited the opportunity to them and marked it up like 20x what he said. And like
Really?
10,
So
yeah,
so like a few grand to have their
yeah,
bar in his video?
yeah. And almost every single one responded and said yes. And to this day, if you go to that video, about half of the bars are there because of me. I can't say which ones, but um, they're there. And like the proof was in the pudding. I was able to automate a lot of it. I got a big payout. Half of it was manual. Don't get me wrong, but like I proved my concept, and I said, okay, there's money to be made here. Let me pivot over there. So absolutely, I think you should try to at least prove it to some degree before you do anything drastic.
So you are it, doing what you do at Digital Presence. It sounds like, at least with the YouTube deal with the bar channel. What's his channel called?
Here be bar.
Here Be Bar.
Yeah.
You're you're functioning as a liaison between the channel and the client. You're setting up these deals behind the scenes in addition to doing the actual coding and automation and influencer marketing.
Yeah. Well, I would say the liaison between the influencer and the brand, or in this
Hmm.
case, the YouTuber and the rooftop bar, is
Hmm.
the person doing the influencer marketing. Now, that's something that I can do or do sometimes or have done and will continue to do. But for that marketer to actually have a set of tools at his hand to maybe find a million influencers that fit into this criteria, maybe to make sure they're actually doing it, that's where I thought it was better for me to come in. So, like at that point, I acted as the liaison, but my software is more for people who choose to be those liaisons to make their lives easier.
Yeah.
Um, so
So
that's where I thought I,
that
I would.
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, no, I just say that's where my company's technology comes into play.
So that breaks the mainstream view of a data scientist, because when I think of a data scientist, I won't speak for other people. I think of, someone who's sitting behind a computer that's analyzing numbers all day. But it sounds like with influencer marketing, you have the opportunity to do things like you're talking about, where you're this big shot person going to huge influencers and saying, "Hey, I have this great opportunity with another bar or fashion line, whatever it is, and they would love to have you. They would love to
Mhm.
have you make a video about them, something like that." So you need a lot of people skills in order to pull off what you're doing. It's not just a numbers thing. Like if you were gonna build the optimal influencer marketer, it sounds like a lot of it would be personable skills that go into it, not just the data side.
Well, yes, to a degree. So, yeah, I agree. To be that liaison, you need a lot of people skills, but you can also use automation and machine learning at your disposal to make easier make a sale. Like, just to kind of give an example of where I can see data science playing a role in influencer marketing is okay. Here Be Bar says, for me to promote this rooftop bar, it's going to cost $1,000. Okay, I can take any historical data I may have, create a model, and say this person is going to generate this amount of revenue for the brand. You should at most pay this influencer $500. This is a bad deal. I could have my predictive model, my data science, give basically a score to these
Mm-hmm.
influencers to see if they're worth it or not. I have influencers come back and submit to my software that it's going to cost $10,000 to get a post out of them.
Mm-hmm.
I can use historical data to say, don't take that deal or that's a bargain. So there are definitely aspects or parts of it where data science can play a role, but from a bigger picture, yeah, I, I see what you're saying. It's got that personality touch.
Yeah. So for an influencer, if you're looking for an ideal influencer to pair with another person that's going to another brand that influencer is going to put in their video or post, in your experience and having all the data in front of you, what makes someone a good influencer? What makes someone that's able to cause other people to take action on a post, to
Mhm.
actually go and buy something or go and visit a bar or go buy that pair of pants? Is it likes? Is it follows, engagement? And what do you see that makes someone where you say, okay, this person's going to actually like make people take action on their post?
Well, what I've seen is that it really depends what the brand wants. Um, so, you know, some people don't necessarily even, I've had clients in the past that don't even care about straight up sales, right? So, just going back to here be bars example, right? Like, there's really no good way of knowing that someone watched that YouTube video and went to a rooftop bar after.
Mm-hmm.
There's just not enough clear enough data, especially at that small of a scale. I mean, bigger term, like, yeah, you could see if someone maybe watched something and then signed up for like a bank account. That's much bigger. But on a smaller scale, it's not so much so all the time directly to sales. Some people want user generated content. Some people want buzz about it. Some people want ticket sales. Some people
Mm-hmm.
want you see how much um, people are talking about it. But one way we can track or have tracked in the past is we can actually see, um, you know, posts they've used versus, you know, clicks on a link they put out or discount code that came with it or something like that. Believe it or not, the I see much better results from smaller influencers than I do bigger ones. Maybe that's because bigger ones tend to I can tell you what the data tells me. I can't tell you why
Mm-hmm.
necessarily. My intuition tells me that the bigger influencers, it's more obvious that they're just being paid for something.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas a smaller one, you know, you're probably following them for a specific reason. But I also see the best results coming from Instagram influencers that also have YouTube channels. And I know that's very specific, but YouTubers have real influence. They have real influence because people are going to them for specific types of things rather than just kind of like more eagle-eyed aesthetics.
Yeah.
But when they then go to Instagram, they usually have a defined follower base. So that's what the data is kind of telling me so far, is that just because someone has a bajillion followers doesn't mean they're going to produce good results for you. And if someone, we usually ask as part of the solicitation, do you have other Instagram? I mean, sorry, do you have other social media channels? And if they do, and they have a very good YouTube presence, they automatically get a couple points because
Yeah.
in the past it's proven to convert well.
Yeah, it does seem like a lot of the bigger influencers have more impersonal ads. Like Post Malone, I saw maybe this was a couple weeks ago, probably just had a post where he was playing beer pong but had a bird scooter in the background. And the
Right.
post is basically just at bird hashtag
Yeah.
ad or something like that. So clearly,
Yeah.
and I have no problem with Post Malone. It's just a very impersonal post. They're not
Right.
saying why I like bird, why it's
Yeah.
better than its competitors. But then I see other people on Instagram or TikTok where it's clearly an ad, or they're saying it's an ad, but they're saying, okay, here's why I use X here,
Hmm.
here, and here's where to go get it, or here's why I like it better than this. They're using a creative way within their own platform to say why you should use this product, and it's usually the
Right.
small to mid-size influencers that do that.
Yeah. No. Absolutely. And that's another reason is that like I think to a degree, people can say what they want about the best type of influencer, but I really think it's on a case by case basis, and it's tough to generalize. Uh, you know, this influencer has this following or likes or something like that. Um, I think it really, is case dependent on what the product is, what the goal is, the industry you're talking about, whether that's fitness or something like that. And I have a funny story that I tell a lot of clients, and it's
Yeah.
completely true. Is that one of my first ever clients was I'm not even making this up. Like I can't even like I couldn't even make this up if I
You
tried.
could no one will know. I'm
Yeah,
just kidding.
I mean, but like it's so out there that you're gonna think I am. But it was a karate instructor that sold willow nunchucks only in the Northwest. He only sold them in the
So
Northwest, and I
made
was
out
like,
of willow trees, nunchucks made out
I
of
guess. And
yeah.
I was like, you got to be kidding me. And I was like, no one. You were gonna get zero sales for this, but it was such a defined audience that if you happen to find the people who were into that stuff, you're gonna make a lot of sales because like that's not like something that everyone else is going. And like he actually did pretty well. Like it was actually surprising because like that's not a general thing. That's like a very specific thing, and like he was very smart about the way he strategized it and all that stuff, and it did really well. And it's not something you look at and say this is going to do super well, but like you go back to like a fitness supplement. How many of those do you see?
Yeah.
A day. Like so like it really depends on the industry and the niche and how you choose to go about it that makes
This
a
is
successful
this is a crazy
campaign.
coincidence because this podcast is actually brought to you by Willow Nunchucks. Just kidding.
That would be awesome. Yeah, and actually, it's funny. The my what is makes my company's technology so versatile is that it can easily be plugged in to any really type of social media campaign. We actually are part owners of a podcast startup called Guest Please. Um,
Guest, please.
Yeah, and what it does is, and it's not launched yet. It's sh- scheduled to launch Friday
Mm-hmm.
in 2 days. Heavy duty work in progress, but it's actually a online medium or an app to connect podcasts and podcast guests. So, you know, I guess the founder of this company saw a really big problem in that podcasts, people that host podcasts, They saw their viewership go up tremendously when they got a really spectacular guest, right?
Mm-hmm.
I assume more people are going to watch a podcast of you and Elon Musk than you and me, right? So they want to go out, they want to get a heavy duty, high profile podcast guest, but then they have to go through an agent and it's really expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea behind this app is that podcasts sign up on one side and podcast guests, potential podcast guests sign up on the other side. And this allows you to facilitate, oh, I need someone who's proficient in data science, or I need someone who did something cool. I need someone who was in California when this happened or something like that. And this will connect you and you just kind of pay a small fee on top of that. But our technology was very easily able to plug into that because if you think about it, a potential podcast guest could be retitled into an influencer, right? So like
Mm-hmm.
we search for influencers at scale, we can also search for podcast guests at scale as well. And we basically took our technology, plugged it right into there, and populated their database with potential podcast guests. Um, so that's why I chose to go to more of the technology data route than actually doing the marketing itself. I thought it was more
Yeah.
versatile that way.
That would be, I mean, not that would be because it is about to launch. That sounds like an awesome application for podcast hosts and guests because
Yeah.
any any podcast, once you start to get over a few thousand listeners per episode, you're gonna get people reaching out to you. And if you're releasing one episode a week, you're getting a lot of people reaching out to you. You're still doing research on your own end for guests that you want to have, but it's kind of like you're combing through what's coming in to your inbox, and a lot of times that will set my sights on someone else that I wasn't thinking of. Where I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I I wasn't even thinking about this person, and then their manager reached out and was like, "Do you want to talk to this person that's about to release this album or book
Right.
or whatever?" But if that was all in the same app, where
Mm-hmm.
it would you could just comb through it and select by interest or niche or whatever it was, I would see that being really useful to podcast hosts.
Yeah, I like to give the analogy. It's very similar to, I don't know if you've ever, I'm sure you have heard of Cameo,
Yeah.
where you can kind of like go on and like pay a celebrity to give you a shout out. It's kind of like the same interface almost. Like you could kind of, you know, browse by, industry, you could browse by category, how high profile, and like right then and there you could like select them, pay them, set up a time for them to come on your podcast. Takes a lot of work out of finding people, talking to agents, and things like that. So that was kind of the goal there. But it allowed us to just rebrand our technology very easily and keep going with another product.
Do you think it would turn people off though if money was exchanging hands between a podcast host and a guest? Like even if it like maybe it's not out in the open, but for like I know from being a podcast host, I know that certain guests have fees for you to come on your
Yep.
podcast, and a lot of people
Yep.
don't like that because many times it's not disclosed. So you think that you're having someone on just to talk, or you're friends with them, or you like them, but they paid the podcast guest or host, depending on who has a bigger following, X amount of dollars to appear. Do you think that that could kind of like turn people off a little bit if they knew that was going on?
I mean, possibly, but I don't think it's necessarily pertinent to our app because it's happening with or without the app. Anyway, our app is just making that facilitation happen. I mean, I've been paid to be on podcasts before. It's just kind of the name of the game. Um, and like, people are going to do it. It's just how it works. And our thing just, our app just facilitates it and makes it a little bit easier. So possibly, I don't know if I know the answer to that question. But at least for me, and I have no authority in this area of podcasting. When I go to a podcast and I hear a big name guest, I just kind of assume there was an exchange of money uh, happening at some point. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so, my intuition tells me it's not a problem. Again, I'm not a podcaster or anything, but um, we're more about the technology and facilitating, making what already happens, what is the industry standard, just happen a little bit quicker.
Yeah. No, I get that. Um,
Yeah.
so something I wanted to ask you is, as a data scientist and as one of the founders of Digital Presence,
Mhm.
coming from the data side, what is something that you understand about influencer marketing that the average person may not be aware of or may not understand? Things that you can see in the data, but other people may not see when they just see the surface level ads going on.
Yeah, I guess I would say that this may sound obvious to some people, maybe not to others. That people people go to influencers and or Instagram accounts, and they just automatically use like engagement as like a pure metric of this going to be a good influence or not. That's why I'm kind of torn about Instagram getting rid of likes, because I don't like aside from the whole their reason of doing it, they claim at least is like kind of for like mental health reasons. But aside for that, is like I think too often clients of mine go, oh, I want this influencer on that one because it gets more likes. Um, but I say, hold on, this influencer just told us he gets, or just showed us he gets 100,000 clicks on his website every day. Um, this guy just showed us that, he's a lifestyle influencer and he's got an inbox full of emails every single day saying, when is the next shoe going to drop or something like that. So I think that when you really open the data and you look at an influencer campaign and you see which one is going to perform the best, it's actually a little surprising to you. And just to give an exact example of that is,
Mm-hmm.
we actually ran a pro bono influencer campaign um, for an, I don't want to say any names just because I don't know if I'm allowed to, but for a nonprofit that focuses on veteran suicide awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we did a pro bono, and they had a huge fundraising initiative to pay influencers. So, with the way they wanted to go about it is they wanted to send this out, offer $20 across the board, whether it was a big guy, small guy, mega influencer celebrity or small. They said $20. Hopefully, we can tug at people's heartstrings because it's a good cause. And the so it was great for us because it allowed me to like get data on influencers across the board because they weren't picky. It was awesome. The people who drove the biggest donations were, I think, if I gave you the list of influencers, the people you would have put last.
Wow.
Like yeah, like it was crazy. So one of them being like there was like a fan page for, and I don't know if I'm allowed to give too many details, but it was like a fan page for a specific rapper to get out of jail. Um, and this page drove more donations for veteran suicide awareness than like influencers that we got that were like military guys. It was incredible. So I think,
Wow.
one advice I would get is like stop looking at likes, stop looking at comments. Half of them are fake. Half of them are BS. People are in engagement groups. You know, ask for some deeper level things. Ask for, don't even like. I think a lot of people even go for like impressions. You can't see that from a surface level, but if an influencer can actually provide that with you, they can take a picture of their insights and send you to that. Like, go deeper than that. Like, say like, hey, I see you have a website in your bio. Like, do you have any insights from that you can show me, um, or something like that? Because like, I think way too many people go for like the likes and the comments, and I think it's a very bad metric on how an influencer is going to perform.
Yeah. I think for podcasting advertisements, that's a problem too because it's hard to see how people are being influenced from listening to a podcast ad, and
Yeah,
you can go by following, you can go by subscribers, you can go
yeah,
by playtime, watch time, things like that, but there's really nothing that tracks going from the Apple Podcast app or Overcast, wherever you listen to podcasts, to
Mhm.
seeing what's the next website that person visits, or like, are they going to any websites during the episode or something like that? Like,
Right.
there's really no way to know, is this person buying this movement watch or this pair of underwear from
Right.
the podcast ad. The only thing that podcasters have are the codes, but
Hmm.
that gets thrown off so much by apps like Honey. Do you know Honey?
Yep. Of course.
It'll insert the codes for you, where it'll just kind of like
Yep.
scan code Rogan,
Yep.
code whatever NPR. So you don't know,
Hmm.
is it coming from someone that is listening to the Joe Rogan podcast, or is it coming from someone who's using the Honey app? And it
Right.
makes it all kind of like this clusterfuck of, how do we know how people are being influenced? How do we know when they're listening? Because I know, but like, I'm a listener.
Mhm.
But the brands want to know, when is this
Yeah.
person making the decision to go to this website and buy this pair of pants, or buy this pair of
Yeah.
underwear, or go to this bar, or
Yeah.
make a donation. I feel like it's hard to tell from the podcasting side, at least, and I
Yeah.
imagine there you deal with a lot of the same difficulty on the influencer side for Instagram.
Yeah. I mean, my opinion on that, and I don't consider myself as much of a marketing or branding genius as I do a technology guy. You know, look, I created a software. I gave the analogy to Robinhood before, and that's like, kind of like me saying, "Hey, I made Robinhood," and then someone asking me for like which stocks to buy, right? So like, I don't know the answer. I'm not a financial advisor. However, I do like with the brands that I've worked with, the ones that kind of understand that it's not about like how many clicks did I receive. It's about like, did I give my image a good name? Like, sorry, did I give my name a good image? What I mean by that is like, Roger Federer wears Rolex watches. I'm sure Rolex tracks how many commercials, you know, like, go down the funnel and to purchase it. Like, maybe they probably do, but like, Roger Federer is wearing the Rolex, and that's the important part. Um, can you track exactly how many people Roger Federer influenced to buy a Rolex? Probably not. I think there's a level of intuition that goes into it. But when I work with brands who like get like, I'm not as worried about the exact clicks and things like that. The fact that like, I made my product look awesome, so the next time someone walks down the street and sees it in the window, they say, "Oh crap, I've seen that before. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna buy that." That's really, I think, what influence is. Not like, I'm going to the website, I bought it, like, done, like,
Yeah.
metric. And actually, to bring in your point, I watch a YouTuber slash Instagrammer. He's like a fashion guy, and I'm just kind of enamored by the way he goes about his channel and his business. I think he is just really good at what he does, and I can confidently say, had influenced me to sign up for Stitch Fix. And I forgot to put in his code when I did it. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
just like down the week, I was like, you know what, like, we talked about Stitch Fix a lot, like, it would save me a lot of time. I'm gonna do it. And like, I went on and I signed in for Stitch Fix, and like, I don't know if he's gonna get credit for that. Like, I know it's probably minuscule among the thing, but like, I don't know that he is, unless they have some like intense cookie tracking, data sourcing methods. But he's not. But like, I'm sure Stitch Fix is rest assured that he did a good job, because he really is good at what he does. So I think that's part of it. I think that's something brands need to be aware of.
Yeah, that's a good point too. It's not always, I see this thing advertised for the first time and then I go take an
Right.
action to
Mhm.
go buy this thing. It's the number of touches where, and I've done the same thing
Mhm.
in the past, where I'll hear something advertised a bunch of times on a podcast and then I go to actually buy it and I think, oh fuck, I didn't even put in the code from this person's
Yeah.
podcast. They're not going to get credit for
Exactly. Yeah.
influencing me to buy it. But it's like, how do you know if you see Roger Federer wearing a Rolex 20 times as a tennis fan watching the US Open or French Open, and then you're in a mall somewhere, or you're in Soho and you pass a store and you see a Rolex and you go
Right.
walk in and buy it, but like it was all this build up in your mind, all these touches
Hmm.
from Roger Federer or whoever it was, and
Right.
that last touch that didn't come from that person kind of put you over the edge. But like the first 90% was all this influencer. That would be impossible to track right now. Or maybe not impossible, but we don't do it, at least in I don't know what the government's capable of, but it's not I imagine it's not something that's available to the average company to be able to do that.
Right. Yeah. No. Exactly. I agree. I think you know the clients that I get on the phone and they want like exact ROI numbers, and like we can give it to them, but I think that if that's all you're focused on, you're doing influencer marketing wrong. Like you just got to take a step back and think about what the word means, influence. Um, I wear, I wear this watch because I see cool people wear this watch. It influences me to wear that watch. I, watch this. I'm gonna watch this show because this person is on it. So, um, yeah, we can provide those metrics. All we want. We could use them to our advantage where we can, but I don't think that is what true influencer marketing is. I think that's what sponsored advertising is when like, you go look at a watch online and then all of a sudden Facebook throws it up on the side of your thing, and then you click on it, like fine,
Mm-hmm.
that's more, I think, directly correlated to metrics, but like, you know, um, there's actually a really popular story, and I don't even know if it's true, but someone I learned in one of my entrepreneurship classes at Wake Forest that um, Heineken paid like a ton of money just to have James Bond have a green bottle in the shot. It didn't say Heineken on it. He didn't never said the word Heineken, but
Mm-hmm.
just you associate that, or an Aston Martin with
Yeah,
type of thing. So
just the assumption.
yeah, just a connection. Exactly. Yeah.
How would you describe what it is that's your special skill? Because there are a lot of talented coders, but not a lot of people that have started their company at the age that you have at 25 and that seem as passionate about what you do as it is about what you do. What would you describe as your special skill that's allowed you to be in the position that you're in today?
Yeah, gotcha. So, I would say it's gonna sound a little cliche, but first of all, I think that I lucked out in that, I'm sure growing up you heard people all the time say, "Oh, I have a great idea for an app," or "Oh, I have a great idea for a business," right? And um, the sad reality is that they're not programmers, and actually hiring a programmer and getting the funding for that, whatever, is more intense than it sounds, right? And I lucked out in that I was one of those kids that's like that always said, "Oh, I had a great idea for an app, or I have a great idea for a business," and I was that, so I had no excuses. I had no excuse to not go build it myself, or at least attempt to. So I think that I lucked out, and I was an engineer, and I was also very uh, creative or entrepreneurial. I feel like a lot of times people are one or the other, and unless you really have the drive to make it work on one side, it's tough if you're not both. So I think that's where I lucked out, is that I was entrepreneurial and I had the means to create a product without spending a ton of money up front. And at that point, the only excuse I had was laziness. So I think I struck gold there. And the other thing being that I think I have, or at least took a smart approach in. I went up to brands, I went up to other people, and I said, "Hey, you're doing influencer marketing. What sucks about it? What do you hate about it?" And I heard the problems. Oh, I have to have an employee sit there, go through Instagram all day, find an influencer, record their information in a spreadsheet. Then I have to go through and I have to solicit all of them. And I said, okay, don't worry about that. I'm going to automate that for you. I'm going to solve that problem for you. So I think I have a knack in waiting. We kind of talked about this earlier, to
Mm-hmm.
actually understand that there's a problem before jumping into it. Um, when I was approached about this Guest Please app, about this podcast app I was told you about earlier, I was told this was a problem. The guy had been in the podcasting space for a while, so I thought he had some authority. But I asked around. I went to people I knew who were in the podcast. I said, "Is this a pain in is this a pain in the butt like he's saying it is? Like, how great of a solution would it be if I came up with this?" And I got that information before saying, "Oh, that sounds great," and delving so far into it. So I think that's where I kind of set myself apart and have been lucky going about it in the past.
Yeah. No, I think that's definitely a skill that you need to have if you want to be successful in it, in whatever it is that you do. You need to be able to see the problems that are in front of you before you start to create something for it, because you might be
Right.
creating a product or service that no one else really needs. You might put in all this work
Exactly.
and then you launch it. And I know, there are probably thousands of companies that have done that before, where they, like Segway, for example. That was one of the companies that I read about, where they had this whole idea where they saw the future. No one's gonna walk anywhere anymore. It's just gonna be all on Segways. We're
Yeah.
gonna, it's gonna be like a society full of people that are just everyone down the sidewalk on Segways. And I don't know analytically what went on behind the scenes, but I almost never see someone on a Segway. There are a lot of scooters around now, but like,
Hmm.
if I see someone on a Segway, it's more like a tour kind of
Yeah.
niche thing. And that
Yeah.
company had a vision where, billions of people would be riding Segways around the planet. And
Yeah.
I guess that would be an example of a
Yeah.
company
That's a good one.
that made a problem where there wasn't one.
Yeah. Yeah. I 100%. And another funny but true story I have, that most people wouldn't believe, is I had that myself in college. I swore I had a bajillion-dollar business idea, and it's gonna sound funny,
Oh,
but
I had
like,
an entire note list of billion-dollar business ideas that were all stupid, but yeah,
well, I
go
think
ahead.
this one sounds like it would be smart. I mean, you tell me, right? So I had this idea that I would go, I would buy a bunch of disposable slippers in bulk, right, from like China or something like that,
Hmm.
maybe a dollar per, and stand outside of like clubs and bars and sell them to girls that come out at the end of the night complaining that their feet hurt from their shoes. And my friend was like, "That's the dumbest idea ever." And we tried it, and I didn't sell a single pair. So I was like, I thought it was gonna be so smart. I thought of all these drunk girls, my feet hurt. I need hold my shoes to their boyfriends. Like their boyfriends, someone would be willing to have to give $5 for a pair of disposable slippers, but no one wanted them.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised you didn't sell a single pair, because I do
Not a
see
single one.
girls,
Yeah.
especially in the summer, carrying their heels,
Right?
or,
Yeah.
just complaining about having to walk
Exactly.
home. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I would have tried it. At least you
Yeah.
tried. A lot of people would have just let it go and kind of like
Exactly.
let it go into the ether.
Yeah. Yep.
So
So.
I have a question for you, or this is more of a statement. I'll ask for your opinion on this, but I just
Mhm.
finished the book Zero to One by Peter Thiel, and he has a
Mhm.
quote in it about founders. And
Mhm.
I know that you were friendly with at least one of your founders before you
Mhm.
started the company.
Mhm.
And so there's a quote from the book that goes like this. Peter Thiel writes, "Technical and complementary skill sets matter, but how well founders know each other and how well they work together matter just as much. Founders should share a prehistory before they start a company together. Otherwise, they're just rolling the dice." Would you agree with that, or do you think that founders could work out even if they don't share a history together?
I know I completely agree with that quote. I mean, my co-founder um, is my best friend. He's outside of the room right now. Um, I went to college with him, and we have very complementary skill sets. He's not a technical guy, great salesman, very organized, you know, type of thing. And um, so our skill sets complemented. We weren't both trying to work on the same thing. If we had a client inquire about something, he gets on the phone, not me. So it worked out very well. And then, we brought on two more founders, also both guys we knew. Another one from college, another one his friend from growing up. Um, I'm able to get away with saying things to Austin that I never would to like someone I didn't know
Hmm.
super well. Like when Austin's being an idiot, I tell him he's being an idiot. He does the same thing to me. Um, when Austin has a really good idea, I say I hate to admit this, but I was really smart of you, and type of thing. So like I think the fact that we were able to be so brutal honest with each other, and there wasn't that formal space between us allowed us to be really, really productive. Like I think if sometimes some people heard us talking to each other, they would think like we hate each other. Um, you know, and we don't. He's like he is my best friend. So I couldn't agree with that statement more. I can't imagine that if I had started this with someone I didn't know prior, like I would have to like beat around the bush if I really disagreed with something, or if he was slacking off, I would have to think of like the polite way to tell him to pick it up. Where um, because we have that history, I know what his work ethic is like. I don't have to beat around the bush saying things. I can be brutally honest. So, um, no, I couldn't agree with that statement more. I would find it to be very difficult
Yeah.
to do it the other way.
Yeah, I was actually the other way where I thought, I before I read this book, Zero to One by Peter Thiel, and before I watched the Jordan documentary, because that kind of changed my thoughts too on how teammates navigate their relationship
Yeah,
and how they can bring the best out of each other. I would have said I will hire someone that's more technically competent over someone that I thought could still do the job, but I was friends with or I had a history with. But then after
yeah,
thinking about it, I think you're exactly right. I think you need room in the relationship where you can be brutally honest with someone and it's not going to destroy it, where you have a foundation and you have a history of joking around with each other, and it's
yeah,
like that person knows that if you say like, hey, like you fucked this up, like
hmm
half joking, half serious, like they're not going to take it wrong. And
yeah,
same thing with Michael Jordan. For people who haven't seen the documentary, he's basically, he comes at people in practice all the time where he's purposely being a dick, or he's purposely kind of being the strong force to bring the best out of people. And you can't do that if you don't have a past relationship with that person. It's just
yeah.
not like people are going to think you're just an asshole, which maybe you are. But
hmm
you could still be friends with someone who's an asshole. Like I'm friends with
Yeah,
some guys who are assholes. Like I think, deep down they're good guys, and they
yeah,
push me to be better. I know they're going to be brutally honest with me if I started a company with them. So I definitely
yeah.
changed my viewpoint after reading that book.
Yeah, I would say the only other thing I would add on to that is, you know, I think it's important to not make anyone, at least on the founders team, even if there is um, any sort of hierarchy. Um, you know, there's technically four founders of my company. We all have different ownership stakes. Some of us own more than the others, but like our voices are even. Our voices
Hmm.
are so even. No one people have other some of us have been there longer than others. Some people had more of the initial ideas. We're even across the board. No one talks down to anyone. I think back to when I was in corporate days. um, you know I was friends with my boss, but she was my boss at the end of the day, right? Like,
Hmm.
I was scared to upset her. I was nervous to do something. I was afraid what she'd think if I was late on a deadline. no one in my company feels like that. No one does. At least, I mean, especially the founders. So
Do you have an odd or an even number of founders?
we have four. We have four founders.
What
But
do you do if it comes down to two versus two? If two guys want to do this and two guys want to do that,
um, we got to duke it out. I mean,
duke it out.
it. Yeah, I actually think that's a better spot to be in than having an odd number. Um, you know, I think an odd number, just because two people agree on something doesn't mean it's the better thing. And I've been on the wrong end of that myself. But I have four founders. We battle it out sometimes. There's some things we don't agree on. Sometimes all four of us have different opinions. But I actually prefer having four because there was three of us to begin with. Then we added a fourth after a while, and I like it better that way. Way so much better that way. So um, it's good. It's good that way. No one's above the other person, and I think I think more than having a history, or more than believing in the person, like the fact that we're on equals, and although people have different titles and all that stuff, like no one is above the other person. I think that's what's led to most of our success.
So I'm gonna end on a bit of an unconventional question,
Sure.
but I think it's a thought provoking question. Hopefully,
Sure.
if you could chat with the dead, what would you ask them?
Specifically, like someone or any, like just in general.
Just in general, if you could have a conversation with just your average dead guy or gal, what
Yeah.
would you want to ask that person?
I guess I would ask them, you know, what do you regret? Like what am I not doing that I should be doing before I am in your spot? Are you happy you worked as much as you did? Should you have worked harder? What is it better like? Those types of questions. Kind of like I always kind of think back to myself and uh, as a startup founder, a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of Friday, Saturday nights I stayed in while my friends partied, and like I think like I'm 25 years old. Is this worth it? Am I doing the wrong thing here? Am I going to look back when I'm 40 years old and say, wow, I should have went out on those Friday and Saturday nights? So like, I guess one thing I would like to know is like, you guys lived a life. What do you think? Type of thing.
Yeah, I'm actually very conflicted on that. That's something I've been thinking a lot about right now. I think just because of my sports background and playing college baseball, it has made me constantly want to compete, and I think I'm the
Mm.
type of person that has to tell themselves to stop working and take a break. And I get a sense that
Yeah,
you're a similar type of person too, where
very.
it's for me, it's like a girl that I'm seeing or my brother that's like, yo, like you need to take a fucking break, like FaceTime or come hang out, like do
Yeah.
whatever. And I thought about, if I am 85 years old or if I'm dead, am I gonna
Mm.
regret work? Am I ever gonna say I didn't work enough,
Yeah.
or am I gonna say I didn't hang out and just be
Yeah.
present enough with other people? And I think it's different for different type of people. I think if you're a person that needs like that kick in the ass to be disciplined, like maybe you'll look back on your life and
Mm.
say, I didn't work hard enough. I wish I worked harder. Um,
Yeah.
but I think there's like a key balance where you have to ask yourself, like, is what I'm doing taking away from my family and my friends? But that's hard for me to see in the moment because I want
Yeah.
to do so much with podcasting, and like you want to do so much with influencer marketing and digital presence. And I know it's a completely different worlds, but
Yeah.
I mean they're still connected. But yeah,
Yeah.
I've just been thinking about that a lot.
I guess my conclusion on that, and I'm one of those people that other people hate because I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning every morning. Especially my girlfriend's not a fan of that. Um, like I work all day, and like I just like kind of like to do it. Half the days like I need to, half of it is I like to. Like work all the time. I get constant like from my friends, like whatever, you don't have, you never have time, all this stuff. But I kind of think about it, you've ever taken a test, right? And, it's rare that you say, you know, damn, I studied way too much for that. But
Yeah.
it's more common and a way worse feeling that says I really should have studied harder for that. So I'd rather be on the other end of it, saying, you know, maybe I should have hung out more, enjoyed my life more, but like I did what was apparently the right thing to do, or I did what like
Yeah.
is was apparent the better thing to do, the more productive thing to do. I'd much rather say that to myself when I'm 85 years old than saying like I wasted my life partying and messing around when I really had bigger goals. I'd much rather
Mm-hmm.
be on the other end of that. That's
Yeah.
my opinion.
Yeah. I'll send you after we get off in a minute or so. I'll send you a video that I saw the other day from Jeff Bezos that my brother sent me. And you might have seen it already, but he's talking about work-life balance versus work-life harmony.
Mm-hmm.
And he said he hated the idea of work-life balance because it insinuates that you need to have a certain amount of time off from work and a certain amount of time not working. But he was
Right.
saying if your work brings you energy, then why stop working? And then
Exactly.
once you get to the point where you don't feel energized by your work, when you feel like it's draining your energy source, then that's probably when you have to step away. And everyone is different with that, and everyone
Yeah.
is working different things. A lot of people are working
Mhm.
things like from 8 a.m. it starts draining them. So it's
Yeah.
like
Exactly.
everyone's on a different level. So it's like if you feel happy working, if you feel recharged by what you're doing, and you can wake up every day at 5 o'clock and do that and feel motivated, then why the fuck should you stop doing that?
Exactly. I was at the beach the other day, and I was like, I, I, I wish I was working. Like, not because it wasn't like, oh, I got to do this, and I really don't want to. It was like, oh, we just, me and my founders just came up with some great new strategies. I can't wait to execute on them. Like, kind of thing for me. So, I definitely harmonize with that, and I would like to see that video if you wouldn't mind sending that through. I haven't
Yeah,
seen it already, but I would like to.
yeah. I'll send it to you right when we
Cool.
get off. I'll make a little note. But
Sure.
yeah, thank you for taking the time again to hop on the podcast. This was a blast, super fun
Yeah,
conversation,
absolutely.
and I like digging into stuff that I know absolutely nothing about, and data, and I should know more about influencer marketing because I'm in podcasting and that's becoming more and
Mhm.
more relevant. But I really enjoyed talking to you, and this
Yeah.
was really fun.
Yep. Yeah. You too. And I really appreciate you having me on.